You made a decision today that you were completely sure about. Maybe it was trusting someone you shouldn't have. Maybe it was avoiding something you know you need to do. Maybe it was replaying a conversation from 3 years ago at 2 a.m. for the fourth time this week. You didn't choose to do any of this. Your brain chose for you. Right now, inside your skull, there are invisible programs running in the background, programs you never agreed to install. And they're quietly shaping every thought, every feeling, every choice you make. Psychologists call them cognitive traps. We call them mind traps, glitches in the human algorithm. And today we're going to expose every single one. There are 10 mind traps in this video. Some of them will make you uncomfortable because you'll recognize yourself in them. That's the point. You cannot fix a bug you don't know exists. Let's open the code. Mind trap number 1, confirmation bias. You've already made up your mind, you just haven't admitted it yet. You search for information about a decision, a relationship, a business idea, a belief, and your brain, without telling you, filters everything it finds. Evidence that supports what you already believe, accepted. Evidence that contradicts it, ignored, dismissed, or explained away. This is confirmation bias, and it is running inside every human brain every single day. Psychologists define it as the tendency to search for, interpret, and recall information in a way that confirms your existing beliefs. Your brain doesn't want truth, it wants to be right. This is why people stay in jobs they hate and tell themselves it's fine. It's why arguments never change anyone's mind. It's why you can read the same news story as someone else and walk away with completely opposite conclusions. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as your brain has already decided it is. And the most dangerous part, it feels like logic. It feels like clarity. It feels like you're just being realistic. You're not broken for having this trap. You're human. But knowing it exists is the first line of code you can rewrite. Mind trap number 2, the negativity bias. Someone says 10 things to you today. 9 of them are kind. 1 of them is critical. Which one do you remember tonight? Your brain is wired at a biological level to hold on to negative experiences longer, process them more deeply, and recall them more vividly than positive ones. Psychologists call this the negativity bias, and it exists because your ancestors needed it to survive. A wrong decision in the jungle meant death, so the brain evolved to treat bad experiences as more important than good ones. One threat could end everything. One compliment could not save your life. The problem is, you don't live in the jungle anymore, but your brain never got the update. This is why one bad review destroys the memory of 100 good ones. Why one argument overshadows 100 peaceful days. Why you can have a genuinely good life and still feel like something is wrong. Your brain is not being honest with you. It is running outdated survival code in a world that no longer requires it. You're not a pessimist. You are a human being whose threat detection system was built for a world that no longer exists. Mind trap number 3, the sunk cost fallacy. You've already spent 3 years in it, so you stay, not because it's working, not because it makes you happy, not because the evidence says continue, but because of what you've already put in. The time, the money, the emotion, the sacrifice. This is the sunk cost fallacy, and it is one of the most expensive mind traps a human can fall into. Economists define a sunk cost as any investment that cannot be recovered. And the rational thing, the logical thing, is to ignore it when making future decisions. What you've already spent is gone. The only question that matters is, does continuing serve you from this point forward? But your brain cannot do this cleanly. It treats past investment as a reason to keep investing, even when the evidence screams stop. The longer you've been in something, the harder it becomes to leave. The more you've paid, the more losing it feels like failure. This trap keeps people in wrong careers for decades, in wrong relationships for years, chasing losses in markets long after the rational exit point has passed. The time you've already spent is not coming back. The only time you can control is the time in front of you. Staying in something broken to justify what you've already lost is not loyalty. It's a glitch. Mind trap number 4, analysis paralysis. You have 17 browser tabs open. You've read everything, compared everything, researched everything, and you still haven't decided because the more options you have, the more paralyzed you become. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, and it is directly linked to what Barry Schwartz named the paradox of choice. More options do not create more freedom. They create more anxiety, more self-doubt, and more regret. Your brain treats decisions like threats. The bigger the choice, the more it scans for risk. The more it scans, the more risk it finds. And soon, the decision itself becomes the danger you're trying to avoid. This is why people spend 3 weeks choosing a laptop and 30 seconds choosing a life partner. The brain doesn't weigh decisions by importance. It weighs them by how much uncertainty they contain. The research is clear. People who make faster, good enough decisions report higher life satisfaction than people who obsessively optimize for the perfect choice. Your brain is not protecting you when it stalls. It is trapping you in a loop, and a loop that never ends is not thinking, it is hiding. Mind trap number 5, the Dunning-Kruger Effect. The less you know, the more confident you feel, and the more you know, the more uncertain you become. This is the Dunning-Kruger Effect, one of the most studied and disturbing findings in modern psychology. In a landmark study, David Dunning and Justin Kruger discovered that people with limited knowledge in a subject consistently overestimate their own competence. Meanwhile, true experts tend to underestimate theirs, because the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. The beginner investor who made one good trade and now believes they've decoded the market, the person who watched a documentary and now debates experts, the confidence that comes before the crash. Your brain mistakes familiarity for mastery. It mistakes exposure for understanding. This trap is not about intelligence. It has been documented across education levels, cultures, and professions. The smartest defense against it is the simplest. Always assume there's more you don't know. The most dangerous version of you is the version that's sure they figured it out. Mind trap number 6, imposter syndrome. You've earned it. You've worked for it. You're sitting in the seat that your effort built, and you're completely convinced you don't deserve to be there. Imposter syndrome is the persistent internal experience of believing you are a fraud, that your success is luck, timing, or deception, and that eventually someone is going to find out. Psychologists first identified this in 1978, studying high-achieving women. They later found it affects an estimated 70% of people at some point in their lives, regardless of gender, achievement, or intelligence. Your brain has a strange relationship with success. It accepts failure as evidence of who you really are, but it rejects success as an anomaly, a fluke, something that cannot last. You dismiss compliments. You attribute wins to external factors. You believe the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are is visible to everyone. It isn't, but the gap between who you are and who you're capable of becoming, that gap is real, and it will only close when you stop waiting for permission to believe in yourself. You didn't trick your way here, you worked your way here. The fraud your brain invented is not real. The results you produced are. Mind trap number 7, the fundamental attribution error. Someone cuts you off in traffic. They're selfish, reckless, arrogant. That is simply who they are. Last week, you cut someone off. You were running late. You were stressed. It was a difficult day. Anyone would have done the same. This is the fundamental attribution error, and it may be the mind trap most responsible for broken relationships, collapsed teams, and unnecessary conflict. When other people behave badly, your brain attributes it to their character. When you behave the same way, your brain attributes it to your circumstances. We judge others by their actions and ourselves by our intentions. This trap makes empathy almost impossible without deliberate effort. It makes you see the worst in people who are, in most cases, just as overwhelmed, scared, and imperfect as you are. The next time someone disappoints you, before you write their character off, ask yourself one question: what situation might have produced this behavior? Not to excuse them, but to understand them. And more importantly, to understand the bias your brain just tried to hand you as fact. Mind trap number 8, cognitive dissonance. You know it's bad for you, and you do it anyway. Then you spend enormous mental energy constructing a reason why it's actually fine. This is cognitive dissonance. The psychological discomfort that occurs when your actions contradict your beliefs. And your brain hates this feeling so much that it will rewrite reality to make it go away. The smoker who believes smoking relaxes them, because accepting that it's killing them while continuing to smoke is too uncomfortable to hold. The person who treats someone badly and then finds reasons the person deserved it, the investor who doubles down on a losing position and begins to believe their own justification. Your brain doesn't resolve cognitive dissonance by changing your behavior. It resolves it by changing your belief. It takes the easier exit. Psychologist Leon Festinger, who identified this in 1957, showed that humans will distort perception, reframe facts, and construct elaborate internal narratives, all to avoid the discomfort of holding two conflicting truths at once. The discomfort you feel is not a problem to eliminate. It is a signal to listen to. Mind trap number 9, rumination. You've replayed it 100 times, what you should have said, what they meant by that, how it could have gone differently, what it says about you, what might happen next. Your brain calls this thinking. Psychologists call it rumination, and unlike productive reflection, which moves towards solutions, Rumination moves in circles. It consumes energy, generates no answers, and quietly fuels anxiety and depression. Research from Yale psychologist Susan Nolan-Huxema showed that chronic ruminators are significantly more likely to develop clinical depression and anxiety disorders. The brain, in its attempt to process a threat by thinking about it, gets stuck. The loop runs. Nothing resolves. The loop runs again. The painful part is that rumination feels productive. It feels like you're working on the problem. You're not. You're sitting inside the problem and calling it analysis. At some point, the processing must stop, not because the question is answered, but because some questions are not solved by thinking. They're solved by doing, deciding, or letting go. Your brain is not protecting you when it loops. It is trapping you in a room with no door and calling it safety. Mind trap number 10, the optimism bias. You know the statistics, half of all marriages end in divorce. Most new businesses fail within 5 years. Accidents happen every day to people who didn't expect them, and yet you genuinely believe these things are significantly less likely to happen to you. This is the optimism bias, and according to neuroscientist Tali Sharot, it affects approximately 80% of the human population. Your brain systematically overestimates the probability of positive outcomes and underestimates the probability of negative ones when those outcomes are about you personally. This is why people don't save enough money, why they don't wear seatbelts, why they launch businesses without contingency plans, why they enter relationships with no awareness of their own patterns. The optimism bias is not entirely bad. It gives people courage, motivation, and resilience. Without it, the weight of reality's uncertainty might make action impossible. But unchecked, it makes you blind to real risks. It makes you unprepared for real consequences. And it keeps you from making the small, unglamorous adjustments that protect your future self. Optimism without preparation is not confidence. It is a trap wearing confidence as a costume. These are not character flaws. They are not signs of weakness, stupidity, or a broken mind. They're the default settings of a human brain. A brain that was never designed for the world you're living in. A brain built for survival in a world that no longer exists. Running software that was never updated for modern life. Every trap in this video has been documented, studied, and confirmed across millions of human beings, across cultures, ages, and intelligence levels. You are not uniquely flawed for experiencing them, but you are now uniquely aware. And awareness is the only thing that separates someone running on default settings from someone who has learned to read their own code. You are not your programming, you are the one who can reprogram it. If you recognize yourself in even one of these traps, this channel is built for you. Every week, we decode the hidden programs running inside the human mind, so you can finally understand why you think what you think, feel what you feel, and do what you do. Subscribe to Human Algorithm. The next video decodes something even deeper,